Okay, this is a tubular deadbolt and the thumb turn here and insert spindle in and the deadbolt comes in and out. That's the face plate and it goes in front of the fore end and that will get you the measurement between the front face and the centre of the spindle. Thumb turn goes in and you can see that screw is going to interfere with the tubular bolt there. So I'm just going to mark that off, and that is something we can file out before we set the bolt into the door to allow the screw to go through that holds the thumb turn. Okay, and there's the strike plate and there's a insert for the back for neatness, and that will go in, turn, and it will lock the door from the inside. So it's a lock that works from one side only. So mark out the distance along this line. This is a preset line, and the distance is from the front of the faceplate to the centre of the insert, and then also mark out the centre of the door edge. And I'm going to mark with a bradawl onto those intersections to allow the drill to locate onto that. Now take a drill bit that's the same size as the insert and drill from both sides of the door in that intersection that you've pre-marked. Then take a drill bit that's the same size as the tubular section of the bolt and fix that into your drill and drill through the front edge of the door along that same line that you've drilled the two smaller holes in, and go perpendicular to that door edge. Now we're going to make sure that the size of the drill bit, depth of the drill bit is marked with a piece of tape, so we don't go too far but we go far enough so the door lock will fit right inside the front. Okay, now I'm marking the top and bottom of the fore end on the lock. And then put the faceplate on and mark either side, like so. That's it. Then take those marks, use a marking gauge to mark down those two edge lines to get a nice gauge line to chisel into. Then take a chisel and start to chop out the recess to take what's called the double fore end, which is the faceplate and the fore end that's attached to the tubular deadbolt. Make a series of chops like so, and then remove those chops one layer at a time, and then obviously repeat the process until you get down to the depth to allow the faceplate to sit flush with the edge on the edge of the door. You can see on the fore end it's actually slightly deeper in those corners, so you need to chop out a little bit more localised. Then mark the two holes that hold the faceplate in place, use a bradawl and then a pilot drill and a drill those out to take the two screws to hold the faceplate in place and keep the lock inserted into the door edge. And that's where I want to file out a little bit so my screw doesn't collide when it's holding the thumb turn in place. Now fix the lock and the faceplate into the front edge of the door with the two screws supplied. And you can see that the spindle's dead in centre with those two holes. Okay, take the thumb turn, place it into the spindle insert that's in the lock. Check that it opens and closes. And now we can mark out the four screws that hold the thumb turn and rows in place. And now you can see that those holes that will go through and not collide with the lock, because we've filed out that little bit of the lock beforehand. and those can be screwed in place. 2 roses, so there's only a thumb turn on one side obviously for privacy, so you can't lock it. Now I'm just marking the spindle, it's slightly oversized, so I'll just make a mark with the file. Now mark the top and bottom of the bolt on the door frame and set a combination square to that distance, the insert distance. We'll mark those lines further across and then obviously set the combination square to that distance that inset, so the door will be flush with the outer face of the door frame or lining. Then put the strike plate over the top of those marks and mark the top and bottom and the front edge of them, so you're lining up the rectangle part of that faceplate, the inner part, with the marks that you've created initially, the 2 free lines that you put on. And now I'm just using the combination square to just gauge those lines parallel down the edge. So then this is the little mortise insert that fits behind the strike plate, just to really neaten it all off so you haven't got a chopped hole in your frame. It's something that looks a bit neater. They didn't used to supply them, but they do now. And I'm just marking around that because that needs to be the size that we chop out our mortise to allow the plastic insert to fit into that hole first of all. But the position of it is important, so you work from the lock itself, the bolt. So I'm just transferring these back lines that I was unable to do while the temporary stop was in place. Now selecting a drill bit that's the same size as the plastic insert, drill out the hole just to remove a bit of the waste, and then start chopping out the mortise that's going to take the bolt with a mallet and chisel. Squaring off the edges, being as neat as possible, removing just a little bit until that should fit in nice and snug. Right, so there shouldn't be too much movement, it should be quite a snug fit, obviously not too tight. Then place the strike plate over the mortise and mark those extra line in the back there, and that gives you the recess for setting in the strike plate into the door jamb, door lining, and just continue to chop that out to a much shallower depth. Use a slightly bigger chisel along the edges. I mean, these could have been marked out with a marking gauge. I just chose to use a combination square this time. It was to hand. And just neatly go to the lines. Doesn't want to be too snug, but because you are going to paint this afterwards, but you want it a reasonable fit, and it shouldn't look messy. It should be clean and crisp to the edge. And goes the faceplate, strike plate, and then mark out the 2 holes that hold the strike plate in place. Bradawl, just to make the 2 indents, then pilot drill. To take the screws to hold the strike plate in place. Like so. Fix them in place. And it should be nice and flush with the face. So we can test the bolt now, close the door, turn the thumb screw and it should lock in place. Now I'm putting a temporary stop in. The stop will obviously be replaced by proper stops at the end. This is just as a temporary measure while I'm fitting all the locks in place, close and turn, and that's it locked, and that's it finished painted and engaged.